Have you ever really stopped to think about what happens to a soul when it's buried 6 feet under? The answer will shock you and maybe completely change how you see death forever. For years, I've experienced something few humans ever have. Through deep trance states, I've been able to observe what happens in the moments after death, and what I've discovered goes against everything society teaches us about the end of life. The truth is unsettling. When we think everything ends with burial, in reality everything is just beginning, and not in the way you imagine. Before I go on, I need you to understand who's talking to you. My name might not matter, but my experience does. I've spent the last 15 years of my life studying phenomena that science still can't explain. Through ancient techniques of deep meditation and altered states of consciousness, I've developed the ability to observe dimensional planes that exist beyond our physical perception. I'm not talking about fantasy or imagination. I'm talking about documented experiences, repeated hundreds of times. During these years, I've witnessed over 200 post-death transition processes. I've seen souls confused, lost, trapped, some for decades, and I've discovered something that will shake your deepest convictions about the afterlife. If you're watching this video, it's not by chance. Something inside you knows there's more than we've been told. And today, you're going to discover a truth few people know. If this content is sparking your curiosity, hit that like button so more people can access these revelations. And subscribe to the channel because what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes will change your perspective on life and death forever. The first time I witnessed a trapped soul was in 2010. During a deep trance in an old cemetery, I saw something that made me question everything I believed about death. It was a man, appearing to be about 50, wearing a dark suit. He was sitting on his own grave, with an expression of absolute confusion on his face. His eyes wandered around the cemetery as if he was looking for something or someone. When I tried to communicate with him, I found out he didn't know he'd been dead for 3 years. 3 years. He believed he was waiting for his wife to visit him, as she did every Sunday when he was still alive. But this was just the beginning. As I deepened my observations, I discovered that this wasn't an isolated case. Cemetery after cemetery, I found dozens of souls in similar situations. There was a woman who died young in a car accident, still trying to finish a conversation with her father, a conversation that never happened in life. She remained close to her grave, repeating the same words she wished she'd said. A businessman who died of a heart attack in his office kept working near his tomb, obsessive about resolving business that no longer existed. And the most disturbing thing, all these souls had something in common. They were physically connected to their buried bodies by something I started calling a vibrational cord. What I discovered about this connection between the soul and the buried body revolutionized my understanding of death. Let me explain it in a way you can understand. When a person dies, their soul naturally prepares for a transition. It's a process that should be fluid, like a butterfly leaving its cocoon. But when the body is placed in the earth, something extraordinary happens. The earth, by its dense and magnetic nature, creates what I can describe as an anchoring field. It's as if the buried body becomes a spiritual magnet, generating a gravitational force that pulls the soul back. Imagine a helium balloon tied down by a string. No matter how much the balloon wants to go up, the string keeps it tied. The buried body acts exactly like that string for the soul. But here's the detail that will shock you. This anchoring gets stronger over time, not weaker. As the body decomposes, it releases a specific energy that intensifies this magnetic connection. During my trances, I was able to map this energy. It manifests as a kind of energetic cord that connects the soul to the buried body. The more time passes, the thicker this cord becomes. And there's something even more disturbing. The depth of the burial intensifies this phenomenon. The traditional 6 feet of depth create an energetic pressure that acts as an almost unbreakable anchor. This explains why so many souls get trapped for decades, some for centuries. They are literally pulled back every time they try to move on. But if you think that's the most shocking part of the story, get ready. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show how Bou'i, the living, are a fundamental part of this trapping process. Let me share with you 3 cases I personally documented that will make you reconsider everything you think about death. The first case happened in Salvador in 2015. During a trance in a century-old cemetery, I found the soul of a man named Jose. Yes, he told me his name. Jose had died 3 years earlier, but he kept sitting daily on his tombstone, waiting. When I managed to establish communication, he told me something devastating. In life, Jose had fought with his only son over an inheritance. Their last words to each other were of anger and resentment. Jose died of a heart attack 2 weeks after the fight, never having reconciled. His soul was literally tied to that grave, waiting for his son to come apologize or give him a chance to apologize. 3 years waiting for a reconciliation that might never happen. The second case disturbed me even more deeply. It was a young woman, just 24, killed in a motorcycle accident. Her name was Marina, and she had died the day before her wedding. Marina remained near her tomb, wearing the wedding dress she never got to wear in life. She constantly repeated, "He's coming for me. He promised he'd love me forever." Her fiancé had moved on, marrying someone else 2 years later. But Marina couldn't accept that reality. Her soul was stuck in an emotional loop, eternally reliving the day that should have been the happiest of her life. The third case showed me how unfinished business can be a spiritual prison. I found the soul of a businessman named Roberto, who died at 62. He kept working near his tomb, obsessed with settling a debt he'd left behind. Roberto explained to me that he owed money to a friend and couldn't move on, knowing he'd left that pending issue. His family didn't even know about the debt, but for his soul, it was a chain that kept him tied to the earthly dimension. These 3 cases revealed something fundamental. Souls aren't just trapped by the physical anchoring of the buried body. They are trapped by unresolved emotional issues, by unrequited love, by unspoken words, by unforgiven acts. And here's the most shocking part. In each of these cases, I discovered that living family members were, unknowingly, intensifying this spiritual imprisonment through their own emotions. Now I'm going to reveal something that will mess with your consciousness in a way you've never imagined. We, the living, are involuntary accomplices in trapping the souls of our loved ones. For years observing these phenomena, I identified a disturbing pattern. The more intense the pain of living family members, the stronger the energetic prison of the deceased soul becomes. Let me explain how this works. Every tear shed over a grave creates what I can describe as energetic threads that connect directly to the soul of the dead. Every intense missing you, every "I can't live without you" acts as an additional chain. Remember Jose, whom I mentioned? I discovered that his son visited the grave every Sunday, crying and asking for forgiveness. But instead of releasing Jose's soul, these visits, laden with guilt and pain, were strengthening the chains that kept him trapped. It's a cruel paradox. The love we feel for the dead, when it turns into desperate attachment, becomes a prison for their souls. I documented an even more disturbing case. A mother whose son died at 16 spent every day at the cemetery, talking to the grave, bringing food, arranging flowers. Her love was genuine, but her inability to accept her son's death was creating such a strong emotional anchor that the boy's soul couldn't move on. During a trance, I was able to observe how this mother's emotions manifested energetically. It was as if she was constantly calling her son back, and this force was more powerful than any desire for liberation the soul might have. But there's something even more shocking about our influence on the souls of the dead. I discovered that certain phrases we commonly say have extraordinary anchoring power. When we say things like, "I'll never forget you," "I can't live without you," or "You'll always be with me," we are literally creating energetic commands that prevent the soul from following its natural path. It's as if we are programming the soul to stay close, when we should be helping it to break free. And here's the most painful irony. We do it out of love. Our attachment, our difficulty in accepting loss, our refusal to let go turns into a prison of love for those we love most. But before you feel guilty, I want you to know there's a way to reverse this. There's a way to transform our love into liberation instead of imprisonment. Now I'm going to reveal something that can completely change your perspective on funeral rituals. During my years of research, I've observed different methods of treating the body after death, and the differences in the soul's liberation process are absolutely stunning. Cremation, for example, creates a completely different dynamic. When I observed souls whose bodies were cremated, I found that the liberation process happens much faster and more naturally. Why? Because fire instantly breaks the physical anchoring that keeps the soul trapped. It's like cutting the balloon's string. The soul is free to ascend naturally. During a trance in a crematorium, I witnessed something extraordinary. The exact moment the flames touched the body, I saw the soul completely release, like a bird being set free from a cage. There was no confusion, no resistance, just a smooth and natural transition. But this doesn't mean cremation solves all problems. Souls with very intense emotional issues may still choose to remain close to the living, but without the physical anchoring of the buried body, they have a much easier time moving on when they're ready. I also studied ancient traditions that used other methods. The Vikings, for instance, burned their dead in floating boats. This combination of fire and water created an even more powerful liberation. The fire broke the physical anchoring, while the water symbolically carried the soul away. Tibetans practice sky burial, where the body is offered to birds. During my studies of this practice, I found that the natural dispersion of the body by the elements also allows for a much more efficient liberation of the soul. Native American cultures often used elevated platforms, keeping the body above ground. This significantly reduced the Earth's anchoring force, allowing the soul to transition more easily. But here's the most fascinating detail. It's not just the physical method that matters. It's the intention behind the ritual. When a culture understands that the purpose of a funeral ritual is to liberate the soul, not to trap it, even methods like burial can be modified to facilitate the transition. Some African traditions, for example, bury the body upside down, symbolically planting the person for a new life. Other cultures perform specific liberation rituals for the soul before burial. What I discovered is that traditional 6-feet-deep burial, combined with sealed coffins and our attitude of eternal preservation, creates the perfect conditions for soul entrapment. But there's a solution. There are ways to modify our rituals, our attitudes, and our practices to transform death into liberation instead of imprisonment. Now I'm going to reveal knowledge that has been guarded for millennia by shamans, priests, and spiritual masters around the world. Knowledge that our modern society has forgotten, but that can literally save the souls of our loved ones. During my research journey, I gained access to ancient rituals that were specifically developed to ensure the complete liberation of the soul after death. And what I discovered will show how primitive our modern funeral practices are in comparison. The ancient Egyptians, for example, didn't just mummify their dead out of superstition. They understood that the preservation process should be accompanied by specific rituals that energetically cut the connection between the soul and the physical body. The famous Book of the Dead contains precise formulas to guide the soul through the transition. But let me tell you about a ritual I personally witnessed in Mexico, practiced by a 93-year-old Mayan healer. When someone died in his community, they performed a ceremony called cutting the sacred cord. For 3 consecutive nights, the entire community gathered around the body. They lit specific bonfires with sacred herbs and chanted ancient songs. But the most impressive thing was the ritual on the 3rd day. The healer performed precise hand movements over the body, as if he was literally cutting invisible cords. When I asked about the meaning of these movements, he explained something extraordinary. Every person born carries cords that connect them to the earth. When they die, these cords need to be cut one by one, or the soul gets trapped like a bird in a cage. During a trance, I was able to energetically observe what happened during this ritual. I literally saw the cords being cut. I saw the soul gradually freeing itself until it was completely free on the 3rd day. Siberian shamans developed even more specific techniques. They used drums with specific frequencies that vibrated the soul out of the body. During the ritual, the shaman enters a trance and accompanies the soul of the deceased to the portals of passage, ensuring it doesn't get lost on the way. In India, I discovered incredible practices related to the Ghats of Varanasi. There, they don't just cremate bodies, they perform specific rituals during cremation. Priests recite mantras that act as commands of liberation for the soul. They literally instruct the soul to let go of all earthly attachments. But here's what impressed me the most. All these cultures developed, independently of each other, similar practices based on the same fundamental principle. The soul needs to be actively liberated, not just left to fend for itself. Australian Aboriginals practice the spiritual walkabout, where the community walks through sacred sites for days, calling the soul of the deceased and then sending it to the world of the ancestors. During these rituals, they use instruments like the didgeridoo, whose low frequencies literally move stagnant energy. Ancient Norse cultures performed rituals called last journey, where they burned the deceased's personal belongings in specific sequences, each object representing an aspect of earthly life that needed to be released. They understood that material attachments create spiritual anchors. But you don't have to be a shaman to apply these principles. There are simple practices based on this ancestral knowledge that anyone can use. The first principle is the 3-day ritual. In the first 3 days after death, the connection between soul and body is more flexible. It's the ideal time for liberation rituals. During these days, instead of crying aimlessly, you can direct your energy to help the soul break free. The second principle is symbolic burning. Even if the body has been buried, you can symbolically burn items that represent attachments, photographs of difficult moments, objects that represent worries, letters with words of anger. Each item burned symbolically cuts an energetic cord. The third principle is the command of liberation. Instead of saying, "I'll never forget you," you learn to say, "I release you with love. Go your way in peace." These words have real energetic power to break emotional anchors. Now I'm going to share with you the most powerful evidence for everything I've been revealing. An experience that not only confirms everything I've discovered, but was told to me by someone who lived the phenomenon of earthly anchoring firsthand. In 2018, I met a man named Carlos, 58, who had a near-death experience during a complicated heart surgery. But his account was unlike anything I'd ever heard about NDEs. Carlos told me that when his consciousness separated from his body during the surgery, he initially felt an extraordinary lightness and freedom. He could move freely through the hospital, observe the doctors working on his body, and feel a deep peace. But then something unexpected happened. He felt a strange pull, as if something was trying to drag him down. Initially, he thought it was his physical body trying to call him back, but the sensation was different. It was like I had a rope tied around my small waist, he told me, and someone was pulling that rope hard, trying to drag me to a dark, tight place. During the experience, Carlos managed to see where this force was coming from. To his shock, the pull wasn't coming from the hospital where he was being operated. It was coming from a cemetery on the other side of town, the cemetery where his parents were buried. I saw them as energetic cords connecting my consciousness to my parents' graves, he reported. And these cords were trying to pull me down into the earth as if they wanted to bury me along with them. The most impressive thing was what happened next. Carlos says that during the experience, he heard a voice, which he believed to be from a spiritual guide, saying, "You need to cut these cords or you won't be able to fully return." Following this guidance, Carlos visualized himself cutting the cords that connected him to the graves. The moment the last cord was cut, he felt total freedom and was able to return to his physical body. But the story doesn't end there. 3 months after the surgery, Carlos returned to the cemetery where his parents were buried. During a meditation there, he had an extraordinary vision. He saw the souls of his parents, free and at peace, thanking him for cutting the cords that held them captive. They told me they had been waiting for years for this liberation, Carlos told me with tears in his eyes. My near-death experience wasn't just about me, it was about freeing the souls of my whole family. This account confirms through lived experience everything I've observed during my trances. The real existence of energetic anchors, the power of family connections in keeping souls trapped, and the possibility of conscious liberation through intentional acts. But Carlos gave me more details that validated my discoveries. He described how the energetic cords had different colors, some golden, representing pure love, others dark, representing guilt, anger, or fear, and others grayish, representing material attachments. The golden cords were easy to cut, he explained, because they were made of true love. But the dark ones were thick and difficult. It seemed like they had a life of their own and resisted being cut. This description corresponds exactly to what I observed during my trances. Connections based on pure love facilitate the transition, but connections based on negative emotions or attachments create powerful, energetic prisons. Carlos also told me something that completely changed his perspective on funerals. During the experience, he saw several burials happening simultaneously and realized how each ritual was affecting the souls of the deceased. I saw souls literally being pushed down by the pain of their family members. He told me, every tear was like an additional weight on them, but I also saw some souls being liberated by family members who spoke words of love and release. We've reached the most important moment of this entire revelation. Now that you know the truth about what happens to souls after burial, you have a crucial choice ahead of you. Will you continue to be part of the problem, or will you become part of the solution? I want you to understand something fundamental. This knowledge didn't come to you by chance. If you've watched this far, it's because your soul is ready to break ancestral cycles of spiritual imprisonment. You have been chosen to be a soul liberator. I will now teach you specific practices you can start using immediately, whether to liberate souls already deceased or to ensure your own future rituals are of liberation, not imprisonment. Liberation ritual for already deceased souls. If you have buried loved ones and suspect their souls might be trapped, there's a simple but powerful ritual you can perform. First, visit the grave during sunset. This is the most favorable time for energetic transition. Bring a white candle and light it near the headstone. Place your hand on the grave and say aloud, "Name of person, I release you from all chains that bind you to this plane. I cut with love all cords of attachment, guilt, and fear. You are free to follow your path of light." Visualize golden cords being cut by a bright light. Blow out the candle and say, "Go in peace, with all my love." Genuinely feel that you are releasing this soul. Power phrases for liberation. Replace phrases of imprisonment with phrases of liberation. Instead of, "I'll never forget you," "I will honor your memory as you go free." "I can't live without you. I carry your love as you find peace. You'll always be with me. You will be free and I will be well." Planning liberating funerals. If you are planning future funeral rituals, consider these practices. For cremation, add herbs like rosemary and lavender to the ashes before scattering. During the scattering, recite, "May these ashes nourish new life as the soul flies free." For burial, if unavoidable, insist on shallow burial, maximum 3 feet, use a biodegradable coffin, plant a tree over the grave, and perform liberation rituals in the first 3 days. The responsibility you now carry. With this knowledge, you become responsible for breaking ancestral patterns of imprisonment. How many generations of your family might be trapped in cemeteries, waiting for someone to release them? You can be that person. You can be the one who breaks the cycle and frees not just individual souls, but entire lineages, changing the world one soul at a time. Imagine a world where all funerals were rituals of liberation instead of imprisonment, where families learned to let go with love instead of holding on with attachment, where death became a celebration of transition instead of a prison of longing. That world begins with you. It begins with your decision to apply this knowledge, to share it, to become an agent of spiritual liberation. Every soul you help liberate will create waves of liberation that will affect other souls. It's a domino effect of liberation that can transform generations of entrapment into generations of freedom. Your next step. Your first step is to decide, will you use this knowledge? Will you visit that grave you've always avoided and perform the liberation ritual? Will you change how you talk about your dead? Will you plan different funerals for the future? The choice is yours. But remember, now that you know, there's no unknowing. You carry the responsibility of this knowledge. And if this video has touched your soul in any way, if you feel you need to be part of this transformation,